Viewer discretion is advised. The following content includes graphic imagery and mature themes.
This isn't for the weak. And yes, feelings will get hurt. So brace yourself and welcome to the Hammer Drops. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Hammer Drops. I'm your host, Dave. Today I got a special guest for you. His name is Jess. You may have seen him over on Instagram as, oh shit. I'm drawing a blank. Jess, I'm bringing you in right away. I just drew a blank. I don't know why. It's been one of those fucking weeks.
Yep. No, you're good. You're good. It's Recon to Recovery.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
All right. So as you just saw, we kind of fly off the handle here. Sometimes it kind of came off the tracks with the internet going down originally. And I want to apologize because I've been having a lot of stuff in my personal life that's been going on. My mom just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So I've been dealing with that back and forth to the hospital. So I do apologize. I knew the name. It was in my head, but I didn't want to fuck it up.
You're 100% good, brother.
All right, Jess, why don't we just start off the show? Let's let the listeners know where they can find you, what you're about, and all that stuff. Let's just start there.
Okay, well, like you said, Recon to Recovery. That's the number 2. Recon to Recovery on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. My TikTok account's pretty new, as well as my Facebook. I just wanted to grow here on Instagram before I started to push out to see if I could grow, and it just kind of blew up a little bit on me. What I do is actually, I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol. I was in, I'll get into more of that later, but I was in the Army and in Iraq and combat wounded and all that. And I just went down a really, really dark road after I got out. I ended up getting incarcerated for many years and in drugs and alcohol and just the worst you can imagine. And finally, when I got my shit together in 2023, I started working and advocating for mental health and PTSD and homelessness and addiction and recovery services and all that stuff, and actually working recovery now as a recovery coach. I'm in college full time. I just finished up my junior year at Fort Hays State University online and is studying social work to become an addiction counselor. And it's like life has just changed so much for me that I went from being on that side of hurting everybody to being on the side of trying to help everybody. And I just want to get the word out there to everybody that no matter what you've been through, homelessness, addiction, all that stuff, I've been there, and that you can come back.
Well, and you know what? There's not a lot of people out there that are doing stuff like this. And me personally, from the bottom of my heart, I commend for everything that you're doing. We're friends on Instagram. I share a lot of your stuff because it hits home with me. I suffer from PTSD from certain things that have happened in my life. So the work that you're doing, it's wonderful, and it's, we need more of it. Let's just be honest.
And that's I'm glad you brought that up about the PTSD, because when everybody hears PTSD, they think combat, right? And they think combat trauma, and really a lot of cases majority of cases aren't combat in America, and I'm sure it's anywhere else but I'm not sure about the stats anywhere else. PTSD means, childhood trauma, which I had. It means you've been in a car accident, you witnessed something horrible, or you've been through something horrible that's affected you to where it still affects you for to this day, and it takes active therapy and active recovery to get hold of that, right?
Right. Yeah, and see, for me, I was diagnosed with PTSD back in 2016, and the reason why, and it was the trauma that I witnessed. I witnessed my father die. I sat next to him, he took his last breath, and then I sat in there when they came, the hearse came, and the coroners came to take him out. I sat in the room and I watched my father be put in the body bag and taken out, and that, I'm telling you, that fucked me up. Like, I have not been the same since. I have nightmares regularly, of those times, and I could just be, out. And I think, I don't know if this is, maybe you might be able to help me out with this, but I know for me, I have like two sides of it. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, but where I can have the like panic anxiety, but then I have the other side where it's just anger, just just pure anger just comes out, and it scares the hell out of me when it happens. And I'm not a big advocate for, big pharma and stuff like that and taking medications, but in those instances when I have to take that medication, I have to take it. I don't have a fucking choice.
Right.
Is that something? I mean, does that kind of go hand in hand with PTSD from what you're learning?
1,000%. And that was the biggest thing is, as we get in without getting too into what anger is, anger is a secondary emotion, right? It's always
Mhm.
something underneath that's causing you to be angry, sadness, whatever you're feeling, it comes out as anger, right? Because
Mm.
that's the expression as it comes out. So, and that's the great thing about talking to people in an active, support groups, one-on-one counseling. I mean, I had to do all that, and let me back up a little bit from there because it's like when I was in the army, I was a staff sergeant. I was a scout. Was a cavalry scout, which is reconnaissance, which is, we spent all of our time in Iraq kicking in doors and stuff like that. So asking for help and sitting down in front of a therapist was the last thing on my list of things I was willing to do, right? When I got
Right.
home, because that was a sign of weakness. And that's how I saw it, was a sign of weakness.
Well, and I think in society that it kind of gets embedded in our brains that is, being men, that we can't do that. We can't show those signs. Like that to us is like, no, that makes us weak. We can't show that.
Right. Well, and I say that like I just decided to go ahead and just jump into therapy because I was just so willing. But listen, it took prison time and it took years of addiction and homelessness and all that shit to beat it into me. And that's basically what it did. It broke me down to where I was like, okay, after living, I was 40 years old when I finally got clean and from drugs and alcohol and started active recovery. It's like it takes a beat down sometimes. Some people they learn a little bit easier than others. I'm unfortunately a hard learner, man. That's just how I put it.
No, and I'm the same way. I'm a hard learner. My path to where I'm at today. I started off when I was 17 years old. I've been through drug addiction. I've been through the system with jail and all that stuff. And to be able to come out where I'm at today, where everybody and their mother would say, because of my past, that you're not going to amount to anything, and to be able to prove people wrong, that yeah, you can come back from this. You just have to put in the fucking work to do it. I mean, you're a shining example of that as well. You just put in the work and you fucking come out of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is people don't understand it is a lot of work. That's basically what it is I tried to get clean so many times throughout the years. I just whether it was I wasn't ready or whatever it was, it doesn't matter why I didn't get clean and why it took me
Mhm.
why I had to go down so far. I'll never understand that. And I don't have to understand that, right? That's the thing about it is I
Right.
just have to understand what I can do now. And the thing about it is like yeah, is people there's always gonna be people out there to this day that are probably and I just don't let it bother me, that will probably never approve and say that I've changed. They'll probably always say Jess will always be this or that. And I'd be lying if I said that it didn't bother me early on because it did. I wanted to prove when I got clean and I got healthy, I wanted to prove to the world that I wasn't this bad guy that everybody thought I
Right.
was after the war and that, and I was just some criminal or drug addict or drug dealer or whatever it was abusive dude. I was just because I was all these the anger there.
Mhm.
If you came across me, there was a good chance we were going to get in a fight for no reason, and guarantee it was going
Yeah.
to be my fault, right?
Oh yeah. No, and I've been there. I remember one time I was at a gas station. I was putting gas in my car, and somebody just looked at me just the wrong way, and I was up in his face, like starting to fight, like, fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are staring at me like that?
Right.
But that's part of the mentality, and I think there people don't bring to light a lot of the things with PTSD and like certain triggers and just certain things and how people are. I mean, and it's people just kind of brushing underneath the fucking carpet, like whatever. But I mean, it's reality. I mean, this happens daily. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to you. I know other people that suffer from it. Has happened to them as well. I know for my brothers who have served, both of them over in Iraq during the wars, one in the Air Force, one in the Army. I mean, just what you guys have seen over there and been through is just enough to just break anybody. I mean,
Mm.
let's just be honest. I mean, it just breaks. I mean, I see what my brothers have gone through. My one brother, he had to move. We live in Northern Illinois. He literally moved from here up to the upper UP of Michigan, just to get away from everybody.
Right.
And that's what he needed because when he was here, he was staying with the buddy. And I'll tell you the story. He was, obviously the guys that, when they come back from the war, they have a hard time sleeping and stuff like that. And, that was typical for my brother. He was up and he heard somebody outside. Now, mind you, where he was staying at, the guy's ex-girlfriend came over who was married, but was going through a divorce. Well, my brother hears some rustling outside. What's the first thing he's going to do? He grabs his gun. He goes outside and he sees somebody looking in the windows. He puts the gun to the guy's head. Like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing here? And the guy's like, relax. I'm a cop. My brother's like, I don't give a fuck what you are. You're on private property. But I mean, just what happened to him when he was over in the war, it just fucking triggered something. I mean,
well, and that's the thing about it is, when you join, like I joined the Army, I can back up and I won't get into like an elaborate showing my story because it could take all day, but I joined the Army after 9/11, and I joined the Army as a combat veteran because, that I joined in and like, well, you can be, I did good on the test and like, you can be like a medic or something. I was like, nah, I want to be a combat dude. And they're like, well, you're kind of a little guy, you got to carry a big rucksack. I was like, no, this is what I want to do. They're like, all right, man, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. Cause I wanted to join and I wanted to go over there and get, vengeance, whatever, revenge, whatever you want to call it on, Al Qaeda and, the 9/11 bombing and all that, whatever. We can get into that. It's a whole other rabbit hole, but what I thought with the information I had at the time, right?
Right.
And so I wanted to be this guy, and I graduated high school and everything like that, but, and I was drinking a lot. I grew up on a farm. So, and I'll back up all the way to that. I grew up on a small farm outside a small town, like a 1,200 person town in Kansas, Southeast Kansas, right? And you're either farming there or you have money already or you're in drugs. That's what you are right back there, and it's still that way to this day, and that's why I don't live there anymore. That's why I moved up to where I live now, right? I live 3 hours away for a reason, and,
Right.
and my family's successful farmers. They have a lot of success in their farming, and that's something that I had the option to do, but it wasn't for me. Right. And
Right.
well, there wasn't much that was for me anyway. So I joined the Army and then I went to South Korea for a year. And then the drinking culture in the Army is just out of control, which is awesome. I'm not blaming the Army for my alcoholism, but it definitely didn't help. Right.
Mhm.
And so I became a super hardcore alcoholic and then we deployed to Iraq. I was a sergeant when I deployed. I was a gunner on a 50 cal truck halfway through the tour. I mean, we got hit all the time, firefights. It was 2005, so it was still pretty early on the war. OIF, I think it was OIF 4 and 5 was what they called that. And in 2006, after I'd already gone on mid tour, came back and our truck was hit by a massive IED and it destroyed. I have pictures of it and
Actually, I have them here. I'll pull them up right now while we got this going.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
So this is the truck you're talking about, right? Right here. This is what happened when you're out.
So this is the picture of the Humvee. I was still in the hospital because there's a hospital right here. That was LSA Anaconda. So veterans who have been in Iraq and stuff like that, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's right outside Balad, but it's called LSA Anaconda. It's an Air Force base, but it's also, Army we were there too. It's a big base. And that's where we were stationed at for my first, 5 months of it's been, 20 years since I was there. So, my numbers aren't always the greatest. Plus I was, in TBI and all that shit. So I got blown up. And then I was a gunner on that truck right there. It got hit right here on the backside. You guys on this back rear side, you can see where the IED hit it, right? And the truck was full, all the way full except for the back left side. I had my our actual gunner was sitting in that seat right there, and he got burnt. I mean, horribly bad. He did survive. My boss at TC, the truck commander, who's in the front right seat, it got burnt really bad, pulling him out. And everybody, it was just a horrible fucking situation, right? Just the worst. I got ejected out of that. It hit so hard, the 3155 artillery rounds that hit us, the IED said it was a pressure plate IED, meaning that we just had to drive over the right spot for it to blow up, right?
Right.
And so it ejected me out of the Humvee. I broke my collarbone, some ribs, and then I was knocked out initially. I woke up, the truck was burning down. We had another unit come over and help get us out of the section, help get everybody out of the vehicle. And they found me. They thought I was still in the truck burning because they didn't know where the hell I was. Ejected 20 feet down the road.
Holy shit.
So you know what I mean?
Right.
Chaos. And now you got to worry about, we have 50 cal rounds by the hundreds in the back of the Humvee. 240 Bravo rounds, 7.62 rounds, 5.56 rounds. All these rounds are getting ready to start cooking off. So we know this, right? Because the truck's burning down. It hit the fuel tank. So we have a matter of time to get out of there before we're in a firefight with ourselves.
Oh, fuck.
So, yeah. And so we get everybody out, and then I remember getting loaded on the Black Hawk, and then I remember getting hit with a whole bunch of morphine, and I don't know if it was that knocked me out or the blast or the combination of both, but I was knocked out, and I was out, and I woke up in the hospital on Balad there. They met him back to sit on the Black Hawk there,
Mhm.
and my soldier he'd already been gone to Germany because of burns, and you can't stay in Iraq with those kind of burns. But anyways, I don't get into his story, but without him telling it, but he's an awesome dude. He's still alive today. I love him to death. And everybody, I mean, the band of brothers I had there is somebody that, I'll never ever forget and always will love, but I finished my tour out in Iraq, and I came home from Iraq, and I was just, I mean, I was a mess. I was drinking when I got home, and then I was on all these painkillers because of the broken bones. And I had a couple surgeries when I got home because I stayed, so I never got the bones that I got broken healed.
Mhm.
Had my collarbone done, and then anyway, so I was going through I let me back up. When I was in Iraq, I re-enlisted for indefinite, meaning that I wanted to stay as long as I could, right?
Right.
Took a cash bonus, and then I got home, and then they're like, "Well, we need to do need to do some more PTSD or traumatic brain injury screening because you're blast, right?" And I was like, "Okay, whatever." And we were getting ready to redeploy back to Iraq, and within
Mhm.
like 6 months, and I was promoted to staff sergeant, which was making rank pretty fast. I was loving life, and then they said, "Hey, man, your brain injury is too bad. You got to take a medical retirement." So it was like a knife to the heart, right? My dream, my life, the only thing I've ever been good at in life was being a scout, right? It's the way I felt. I was married. I had 2 kids that I very, very young baby kids. And I had a wife that had left me because she was just like, I'm not going to deal with this craziness, right? So long story short, I ended up taking a medical retirement. I got out. I was married to my second wife. I jumped into a quick relationship after my first wife. It was really abusive relationship on my part, and then I caught her in an affair with one of my soldiers, and then long
Right.
story short, I ended up going to prison for assault, kidnapping charges, all this shit, and a lot of it ended up getting dropped, but I ended up pleading out to assault charge, and then went to prison, man. And when I got to prison, it became heroin, and then I got out for the first time. I headbutted my parole officer for fucking talking shit to me, and then they gave me another assault charge on a police officer this time, so I went back to prison. And then yeah, so I just went down this spiral of, and a lot of people say, oh, the Army didn't treat you right. The Army didn't do this for you. It's like, yeah, the Army could have done better. The VA could
Right.
have done better, but really we are responsible for our own recovery, man. And that's
Right.
something that I didn't get for so many years, is that I was always, and I always played that victim role so well, right? That it was a reason for me to continue to use and drink. It was a reason for me to be like, don't let him go, let him go, let him drink because he's got a Purple Heart and he was hurt in Iraq, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, but how long are you going to sit in your self pity before you realize that you're fucking 40 years old like I was and had nothing
Right.
in?
Right. Well, and unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't understand that. They just figure, okay, they kind of just like help out the situation, keep you going on that path because they don't want to say anything to you.
Right.
And that's unfortunate when people really need to speak up in those situations. Like, hey, yo, man, you're going down this fucking path. You need to fucking pull it back before you get too far down. And for you, I mean, you not only being in the war getting blown up like that, but then you go to prison. Now, I mean, it's being in jail and stuff like that too. That is like that twists your mind as
Oh,
well. When you come out, you're not the same fucking person you were when you went in. I know when I first came out the first time, like I had a different attitude, and I remember to this day when my dad picked me up and he's like, "Hey, I got you some McDonald's and stuff like that, something to eat, because let's be honest, jail food sucks." Although I will say this, when I was locked up, the biscuits and gravy, that's how I got turned on to biscuits and gravy. That was like the best fucking meal ever in jail. And, I would give up commissary just to get the biscuits and gravy if I can get extra because there was fucking people in them that didn't like it. It's like, hey, I'll give you a couple candy bars for your fucking breakfast today, and they would fucking take it.
yeah.
But, but when we were driving, somebody in front of us just like brake checked us and I lost it. I started going off, it's like, motherfucker, this, that, and the other. I'll get out there. I'll fuck them up. My dad just kind of looks at me. He's like, what the fuck happened to you in there? And then you got to start reliving everything because, when you get locked up, I'm painting a picture, you're the new person on the block. And, if you don't want to be fucked with, you gotta show them that not to fuck with you. And and you make some alliances sometimes with some people, and when they tell you to do something, you fucking do it. And at least in my instance, I had somebody, this guy whose name is Marco. It's like, hey man, if you want fucking protection, you need to do this. While we're playing basketball, this guy right over here, you need to fuck him up. So what did I do? 18 years old, had no choice.
Yeah.
I fucked him up. I got thrown in the hole.
Oh yeah.
But
when I first got to prison, you got to realize I was coming out of the army, and I was like, they're in the army. I'm sure there's racism exists. I never experienced any racism when I was in. And people can say what they want about the military, but it was the only place that I've ever been where people were actually colorblind. You know what I'm saying? And that was like, it was not tolerated. It was not, anything. I remember I had a boss one time, and because I'm from Kansas, and I was like, and I had a Confederate flag plaque from when I was, when younger and stuff like that, and I didn't, and my boss was like, and he was like my best friend, and he was like, listen, bro, you're not having that shit. He's like, that's unacceptable. This is the military. Leave that shit at home. Right. And he was like, and I learned then, I was like, he's like, well, what are you going to do if you have a black soldier and he comes in and sees that, and all of a sudden he can't trust you, and you're supposed to lead this guy into combat? And I thought about it, and it changed my whole perspective on everything from there on out, and God bless that guy. He's an awesome person. And it's like, that was the place where it felt like the world was safe from racism, because it's like nobody played the racism card in there. It was like, you just didn't see that, because we all had a common goal, and that was survival, right? And the brotherhood that was going on. And I'm sure the Army's, I know it's changed a lot, and that's another conversation we can have for all day long, but hopefully it's getting better for the better. But and that was, so I got out of the Army, and then went straight into prison, and I was approached by the white guys. Obviously, if you can't tell that I'm pretty pasty, and they said, you're either with us or you're against us. You know what I'm saying? And that was all right. And I don't know if you could tell this or not on screen, but I'm not a big guy. You know what I mean? And I lost more fights than I won, probably. And it was one of them things where it was like, all right, well, and that's how you survived, and that was what you did. And just because that I was there and did what I did to survive doesn't mean that I got out a different person. I mean, as far as that, my view on racism goes, because here's my view with everything. And this is a quick tangent. Dude, you're going to find a piece of shit in every race you look in. If you're looking for one, and you're going to find it in every single race. And it's like, pick the good ones. And there's a saying in recovery that says stick to the winners. And that means stick to the winners, of people that share the same common goals as you do, the same common characteristics, the values, those things that come out that are important, right? Faith, family, and all that stuff that's important to me. So yeah, so going into prison and then coming out on top of that with like the PTSD from the Army, I'm telling you, like, I have nightmares to this day almost. And my wife, my poor wife, she experiences them because she's usually up because of me while I'm sleeping and going through these nightmares. And she's like, the next morning she'll tell me, I said, was it prison or was it Iraq? And she's like, sometimes it was this or that, or sometimes she'll say, I don't know, I couldn't tell you, you were just mad at somebody.
Yeah. And that's having a loved one that understands, and because I'm in the same boat with my wife. If I have a nightmare or something like that, or something's like triggered me, I know when I'm having, like, when I get triggered, like, I've been curled up in a ball, and the wife knows, like, we could be arguing up to that point. The argument stops. She gets on the ground with me, and she's like, it's going to be okay. Yeah. And she helps to get me through it because she knows, and having that at home, it is such a great fucking thing. I mean, it helps get you through those moments that you need to get through, I mean, obviously it's probably happened with you on a few occasions, I would assume. I mean, it's happened to me. So, but it's that support system that we all need.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the most important things. And I always try to stress to clients, to sponsees I have and stuff like that, is like, who you surround yourself with will dictate your success in life. Right. And it's so important for people. And it's like, when I was in addiction, I thought about, the 5 people that I surrounded myself with most, and they were never healthy for me. Right. And the people that I surround myself with today are all healthy for me. Right. And that's, and that's the difference is, it's another, go back to the stick to the winners thing, is just like, and it's not, when I say winner, it's not, I'm saying money, financial gain, economics, social status, none of that, but it's like the people that share the values that make you a better person. And not only that, the people that are going to hold you accountable for when you do something that's not honorable, something that's not acceptable, right? Because we all have our flaws, and as much as progress as I've made in my recovery, there's always room for growth. And as soon as I think that there's not is when I'm going to start having issues again in life. Right.
Right. Well, and I think that one of the first things I learned when I went to rehab, like you have to disconnect from the people, places, and things that you were involved with that caused during your addiction. Because if you don't disconnect from those things, you're just going to go right back to it. It's just going to be repetitive. It's going to be just the spinning spiral circle that's going to just eventually run out of control until you hit that rock bottom again and again and again. So you got to make that disconnect from those people. And for me, I know that was like one of the hardest things for me to do. It's like, well, this guy, I've been friends with him for so fucking long. Like, the first time I was in rehab, I'd go back and hang out with him. And what ended up happening, I start using again.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then finally it just clicks. It's like, well, I really need to get the fuck away from these people, get away from the places that I was going to all the time. And, if I want a fucking shot at living and doing better, I have to make this course correction, because if I don't, I'm just fucked.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And that's what I always try to, as always, like remind myself that, getting sober is like, I tell people all the time, it's like getting sober that's what you go to detox for, right? Or rehab, the recovery part, the actual active recovery, is getting to be a better person and finding out. The biggest thing for me was the biggest question I had to ask myself, which was the hardest question that I had to answer, was what about me is so fucking miserable, is so unhappy that I feel like I have to put a substance in my body every day just to get up and meet the day, right? And
Right.
to get up to face family, to face a job if I did have a job at that time, or to even go out and commit crime, right? To go out and I was forgery is a lot of my things I did. And it's like, what about me felt like I just couldn't be whole without having a substance? And when you ask yourself that question, man, it generally, I mean, in my case, it goes back to childhood, right? And it goes back
Mhm.
to, what were these beliefs I had about myself that were invalid, that I thought were like that I wasn't good enough, or that I wasn't strong enough, or that I wasn't lovable, or that I wasn't, cared about. All these things, it's like, are those really true? Are you still holding these assumptions about yourself that have been proven wrong time and time again? Because if all those were true, you wouldn't have been able to be a staff sergeant in the Army. You wouldn't have had to marry a wife that loved you, right? And all these things, it's like these are just you have to question these beliefs you've had, because just because you've had a belief for 40 years or 80 or whatever it is, doesn't mean that it's correct, right?
Right. No, exactly. And, I think one thing I've learned, because just recently I started, like for the last couple of years, I've been doing this like energy healing, because, and I didn't really believe into it too much when I first started doing it. But then as we started getting into it, I noticed I start feeling better, because we harbor a lot of the stuff that we go through when we're kids and we don't remember.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when you don't remember. So that's why you go see these people like energy healers, because they're able to somehow, some way be able to see like, what's kind of going on, it was fucking weird. And I think the one time that it clicked in my head that it actually works was I had this pain in my neck. Now, and I was doing it kind of like this, just over Zoom, having the session with her. And she's like, yeah, I'm being told like you have this pain, and pointed in the exact fucking spot I was having the pain. I'm like, and my mouth just dropped. It was like, holy fuck, how did you know? I didn't even fucking tell you about it. I was holding that in and not saying it about it. And then, she was like, yeah, it's right over here. Tell me exactly what was going on. It's like, holy fuck. But, you got, I was putting in that work, especially with the PTSD, to help make it a little bit easier on me and try to work on the issues that I might have had when I was a kid that I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens that make us who we are is a lot of the shit that's happened to us when we're kids that is so suppressed because of everything that's going on. And unfortunately, we have to, and I believe you have to be able to deal with those things head on to be able to fully be able to recover from whatever trauma that you've been going through.
100%. 100%. Because, before I went and finally got clean this last time, or got clean, because I was never really trying to get recovery. I wasn't ready to get clean yet, because I liked my drugs and I liked my alcohol because they numbed my pain, right? Temporarily.
Right.
Caused more pain, but they numbed it, right? So when I went to 7 rehabs, my 7th rehab was when the one I got clean on, right? And
Mhm.
I never stayed, if I did stay, I wasn't serious about it. It was usually out for less than 24 hours before I got high or drunk. And then or both. But this last time, what had happened was I had cases pending for forgery, and I was just out there running amok, and my wife was going to leave me, and it was just my life was rock bottom again. You know what I mean? But rock bottom has a basement sometimes, and it's like, yeah, I was just doing the most, and I got to rehab, and I finally was just like, you know what? Everything was fucking just the worst it could be, and I was at rehab, and I got caught using at rehab, believe it or not, right? I was in there for like 7 days or 10 days, whatever it was, and I got caught using. Well, and the director of the place was like, "Jess, you're getting ready to go to prison if you don't, knock it off back to prison. What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. It's just what I'm so used to doing is finding a way to numb the pain, right?"
Mhm.
And that's a society thing, right? We don't want to feel pain. We want pleasure and least amount of work, right? And that's just kind of how I spent a lot of my life after the military. And at that point, he had a conversation with me. This guy Dylan, I'll never forget him. I have still in connection with him today. And he says, "Well, just," he said, "What are you going to do if I kick you out of this rehab today?" I said, "I'm going to go home and get high." He said, "Yeah, I know that. But what are you gonna do if I let you stay?" And I said, "Well, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna do something different." He says, "I don't believe you, but let's see and let's give you a chance." And he did. And I decided to stay 60 days instead of the court ordered 30. I dug in. I started to talk about the trauma from Iraq. I started to talk about the stuff that happened to me throughout my life that I wasn't able to ever talk about, or it wasn't that I wasn't able, I wasn't willing, right?
Right.
And it starts with that, like you said, if you're not willing to talk about that tough stuff, to figure out, because the reason you bring it up is like goes back to what are these false beliefs you had about like Iraq was like people that got hurt in Iraq. Was there really anything else more that I could have done to help them not get hurt
Right.
that night? Or on another day. There, when it comes down to it, there was never any neglect on my part. There was never any nefarious behavior of anybody in my
Mhm.
platoon, right? Everybody did the best they could do throughout our tour to make sure we all got home, right? As safe
Right.
as we could. There was never anybody that went into combat. My parents never went into any situation, or friends never went into my situation like, let's go see how I can fuck Jess up today." That was never a situation I've been in. It was just that I was put in unfortunate situations and unfortunate shit happened, and I have to grow from that now.
Right. And that's where people need to get to. I know when I was in, kind of similar situation when I was in rehab, I would find an excuse, when I was in the halfway house, to stay out, away. And I would go meet up with those people, go get high, go get drunk and all that stuff. And I'd come back to the rehab, the halfway house at night. And then the next morning I have a drug test,
Yeah.
because they fucking knew it. I mean, they're not stupid. They're like, okay, this guy was out, didn't come in until after curfew, and what somebody smelt booze. I mean, you can't mask booze, but when you're in, when you're an addict, you think, well, I can drink this and nobody's gonna smell it.
Oh,
I can
yeah.
smoke this and nobody's gonna smell it. Or I'm gonna, they fucking do. It's like their senses heighten when you're in these situations, and then they see your eyes, and your eyes are all fucking bloodshot. You can't fucking hide that. It's like next day I wake up, here's a cup, go pee,
Yeah.
and it's
It
like fuck. And I was in there, court ordered as well. I'm like, I'm fucked, and that's I'm just like, I'm going back. God, I was so pissed at myself. But after that, I was like, I took the drug test. It obviously came back negative, positive that
mm,
I was doing stuff. And they're like, kind of similar situation, like, we can report this or you can actually start putting in the fucking work.
yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, it's time. I put in the work because, when you're 17, 18 years old and you're being locked up for doing stupid shit, last place you want to go to is back.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity at that age or any age to better yourself. You don't want to reverse course and go back to the way you were. So, but sometimes it takes multiple times. It's going to take people to stumble, to fall down, but having that person there to offer and extend, like you had and I had, that last opportunity is all somebody needs. I mean,
Yes.
it goes a long way.
And throughout all of my years of addiction, almost all of my during all since I got out of prison, the last time, which was from Colorado, where I was in prison in Colorado, and I came back to Kansas. I had one person, it's a mentor of mine, and he stuck by me when nobody else, I mean, nobody stuck by me. Family, friends were gone. There's this one guy, and his name is Bob, and he stood by me, and he's still there today. And I mean, he stood by me when like everybody was like, "Why are you helping this guy? Why are you trying to support
Right.
this guy? He's a lost cause. He's no good. He's never going to change." And and he's someone who has strong faith in God, and he was with me through all these relapses, through all these, jail sentences, and relationships that was, it's just all this. And I remember one time he told me, and I'll never forget what he told me. He says, and I didn't get clean then, but I remembered what he said, right? He says, Jess, until you find God, until you find a higher power,
Hmm.
and his God is Jesus Christ, which is mine as well. But I don't care who your God is, as long as you have a higher power that's
Right.
healthy, right?
Hmm.
And it doesn't incite murder, then right,
That's
it's
right.
like as long as you have a higher, it's until you find a higher power, until you find something bigger than yourself to live for, then
Mhm.
you're always gonna be in this situation, and it really hit me hard. And then when I went to rehab and all these things started happening for me, and I allowed God back into my life, because God was always there for me, and I'm not someone who who preaches Christianity, or tells you to have to go to church or anything like that, because I know the church is full of people that are not good people, right? The church is
Right.
full of people that are good people, and it's like, so I always tell people and that I work with, and that's what we use in the rooms of recovery, is always a higher power for most of the recovery programs, right? And it's like,
Right.
there's Buddhist recovery out there. I participate in Celebrate Recovery, which is a faith-based Christian recovery. I'm really involved in our NA downtown, which is Narcotics Anonymous, here in town. I chair that meeting. I bring a meeting up to the VA. But I always tell people it's a higher power thing. If you're the biggest thing in your life, if you're the God of your own life, then man, then you're gonna have a really small world, and you're gonna have a really unhappy world, because your God's gonna depend on what your mood is that day, right?
Right. No, exactly. I know
Yeah.
for me, I mean, when I was in rehab, when I was going through my recovery and stuff like that, I mean, yeah, the higher power thing was a big, big thing. I mean, unfortunately for me, they were really pushing, God and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for me, I grew up Lutheran. I
Mhm.
was kind of forced to go to church. I mean, that was the typical thing, growing up for me. It's like, okay, you got to go to church. You go into church until you confirmation and all that stuff. And then you can make your choice if you want to continue going. I was the guy that would ditch confirmation classes because I just couldn't understand.
Mhm.
It just wasn't resonating with me. So I was that guy ditching those classes and all that stuff and just kind of doing whatever.
Yeah.
For me, when I truly understood about like the higher power and stuff like that, I mean, luckily for me, I was able to, complete my recovery, and I haven't touched any of this stuff since, the stuff that got me in there, I should say.
Mhm.
But it was after my father passed.
Mm.
I was in a very, very dark fucking place. I was drinking a lot and just like I used to smoke cigarettes all the time, and I was up to like 3 packs a day.
Mm.
And I was
Wow.
like trying to like just fucking whatever. Let
Self-sabotage,
it
yeah.
just let it fucking happen.
Yeah.
And that's when I found my, I guess you can say, my calling or whatever. And that's when I turned to Norse paganism. And
Yeah.
I really resonated with it because it made sense to me.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't matter if you're Christian, you're pagan, you're whatever. It's about that higher power and what you resonate with. I
Right.
mean, because ultimately, it's all, as long as you're not, like you said again, like as long as your God isn't calling for death, destruction, chaos,
Yeah.
you know, like some religions are, which we won't discuss right now. That we'll save that for another show because I
Yeah.
would love to have your take on that.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
would. But you know, when it kind of came to me, it was just like it was very calming, and it got me out of that hole. It got me out of that darkness, and it's been great ever since. And you know, I've just been able to move forward with it, and there's a lot of the same principles with Norse paganism and with Christianity, because a lot of the pagan aspects of it was brought over into Christianity, which helped to make it a lot easier. But just being able to resonate with it, like I can go out, go for a walk just to calm myself and talk just like how I'm talking to you. And, I just have this calm. If I'm just having a bad day, I see a symbol. It's like, it just brings this. just the calmness over me, it's just, but I mean, if it wasn't for that, I honestly don't know if I'd be here today. I don't think we'd be having this conversation.
100%. And I'm glad you brought that up about the religion thing, is because, yeah, and we could talk all day about a lot. I know quite a bit. I mean, I don't know extensively, but I know a lot about different religions, and Norse paganism, that's where Christianity got its start from. All my Christian followers and my family would probably hate me for that, but I know enough about it is there's too many similarities for it not to be kind of a move off that. Right. And then,
Right.
I mean, the similarities are just like almost identical. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's like I said, but the problem is with the higher power is when people hear higher power that grew up, like I was forced to go to Catholic church, Catholic school. I went to
Mhm.
Catholic school before it shut down. I think kindergarten I made it, and then they shut the school down. But I was always made to go. My parents made me go to church, but they never participated in the church. They made us ride the bus, and then we had a church band to come out and get us on the farm, but they never were there. They were just like, "Go, you have to go," whatever it is. So, and it was always a religion thing and not a spirituality thing, right? And so
Mhm.
and like many others, you kind of grow to resent church, right? Or especially if you had a bad experience in church. And there's so much of the church people that I talk to in recovery, they're like, man, I had a bad experience at church. Either it was trauma or it was just people rejected me or whatever it was. So
Yes.
from then on there, and that's the problem with church, it pisses me off so bad, is the closed mindedness that happens at church. And it's like, if you drive somebody out, you may be driving them out to their fucking demise, right? They may go out there and never come back again because of one bad person that fucked him up as a 6-year-old. And it's like, and that's why I'm so careful about, the church that I'm involved with my kids with. Yes, I'm involved with the church in town here. And it took me a year to start going to this church because I'm really skeptical about my family and who I trust my family with. Right. And that's
Mm.
one of those things is like the churches drove so many people out and gave such a bad name to a lot of people, secondary bad names. Well, I had a friend that got touched when they were a kid in the Catholic church, right? So they don't
Right.
want to part of it, right? And it's like, what I always try to tell people, and the people that have the hardest time in recovery are the ones that struggle with the higher power thing. And it's generally
Yeah.
it's back into the church. So what I try to explain to people is like, just have a power that's bigger than you. That has to be bigger than you, right? Whether, like the Native Americans explain it as like they have the Great Spirit, right? It's just the spirit. It's like one spirit that just, and I kind of explain it's like just whether it's karma, whatever you want it to be that's bigger than you. A lot of times it's as something as the recovery room that you're involved with or your
Mhm.
family, as long as it's a bigger idea than you, right? And that's what the thing about it is finding that higher power. And it kind of comes with, like you said, taking those walks and just kind of, prayer is asking for something or praying to God. And meditation, as we explain it, is listening to your higher power, listening to
Yeah.
whatever higher power decides that you feel like you can be receptive towards. And that's kind of the thing about it is, and all that all comes back into, well, when you're tired of getting your ass kicked by drugs and alcohol or addiction, whether it's gambling, porn, whatever that addiction is, you have work, whatever it is that you have, you'll start opening your mind to those different ideas. And whether it's
Mhm.
pagan, whether it's Buddhist, whether it's Christianity, whatever it is you find, as long as it's bigger than you, man, then you're on your way.
Yeah. No, exactly. And, I think it was for me, the thing that got me to, out of my situation was because, for me not having the higher power, because it was hard for me, was just, I think the fear aspect of being that young and the chance of going back.
Mm.
That's what really got me to be like, no, I can't do this anymore. And, go. I'm just lucky it found me when I needed it the most, because if it didn't, we wouldn't, this conversation wouldn't be happening. And I'm glad that it did happen. So,
Yeah.
um, we, we have some other pictures. Do you want to go over some of these other
Go
pictures
ahead.
that you
Go
sent
ahead.
me?
Throw them up. Throw them up.
All right. So let's see here. We are going to go with, we'll go with this one first. Tell me about this one. I know it looks a little distorted. It was a little small one.
Yeah, that's an old picture. That was in Iraq, man. I was in Iraq. That was right outside of Balad. That was I think a week or a month before I got blown up. I know I have the date on one of the pictures. I can't remember which one it is, but or the same month. That right there is, see that weapon, that little sniper rifle we're using right there.
Mhm.
We made this gun out of an M14 we had in the arms room from back in Vietnam or whenever that was from. The M14, and we custom put handrails on it. We got a scope downtown at the local gun store. before we deployed, they gave us a whole bunch of money for our platoon and for our unit when we deployed, and we turned this little gun into, and it's actually a hell of an accurate little sniper rifle we had over there, because the M24 was just a 308. It's what you
Okay.
used in sniper school, but we didn't have see as and although I went to sniper school, I wasn't ever a part of a sniper team. I wasn't ever part of a sniper unit. We did sniper operations with the dude who went to sniper school with me. And we did a couple. We never really had any success with our sniper because we were scouts. And so we spent 90% of our time driving up and down the road looking for IEDs. That was IED warfare, was kind of what it was after the initial push, when they invaded Baghdad and Fallujah and all those fell. It was kind of like more like insurgency warfare.
Okay, yeah, and I just looked at the other picture because I don't believe I have that one up here. So this one is from 5/2/2006.
Yeah, and I got blown up on 5/18 of 2006. So that was 2 weeks before that.
Wow.
Yeah, that was right there. That was right down by the Tigris River right there in Anaconda. Right, that Anaconda was LSA stands for logistical surveillance area.
Mhm.
What it was just a big. It was just supply. It was just a supply route, right? And there was trucks coming in all day long. So vehicles would come in all day long for supplies and stuff like that. So we'd always have to have the route clear for them, because in the emergency they didn't really like to hit. Their really intentions weren't to hit the combat, the infantry, the scout guys as much. They tried to go after the targets they could that were supply guys or fuelers or something like that, because they were easy targets, right? I mean, and security that was with them was they usually had an infantry unit or somebody attached to them, but their job was just kind of like push through the area and not sit up and do, QRF would come in, but our job was just kind of keep those routes clear. We kicked in a lot of doors, did a lot of stuff like that. I mean, we did a lot of hearts and minds stuff too, man. And people get a bad view about all Iraqis are bad and all the people are bad. They're really not, man. But a lot of them are just trying to survive, dude. And if you invaded my country, I'd be trying to blow you up too.
Right, and and I've heard that same thing from both my brothers. Like, you have some people that were over there in Afghanistan that they didn't want you there, but you had a handful of people that wanted you there to clean it up so they could actually live free.
Yeah.
And for all you guys that sacrificed as much as you guys did, I mean, I can't thank you enough. And and I'm sure a lot of other Americans can't thank you guys enough, because if it wasn't for you guys, this would be a completely different scenario, I think, that we'd be in. Now let's see here. We got this one.
Oh, this was actually our another guy in our unit. This was not my Humvee, but this was obviously a 50 cal. This is a buddy of mine. We had this little Raven right here. This was before the days. Well, this was a little drone is what that was.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna.
It's an airplane. Well, here's how ghetto it was. Dude, this was 2005, 2006. So we took off, you ran with this thing and took off with it like an airplane, right? And then you had a remote control that was driving around. It was called the Reagan, and this thing would fucking go down all the time. Like it would go down, so we had to go gather it up, right? So they didn't get it. So every time it would go down, they'd be calling us up on QRF and be like, "Hey, we had another Raven go down. Go find the fucking thing." And sure enough, some Iraqi dude would have it. Some farmer would be like, "Here you go, man. Here's your fucking broken down ass plane back."
How you describe how they take off. It reminds me. Remember those when you were a kid? Those styrofoam planes.
Yeah. Exactly.
It sounds like one of those, and I'm just like, holy shit! I mean, because that almost looks like it.
It
and
was.
just imagine how our technology has just come like to where we're at today. We start from here, and where we're at today is like, holy fuck!
It's crazy, isn't it? It is. It is, and it's we had a lot of cool equipment then. We had a lot of stuff that was just like we had IED blockers and stuff like that were in the Humvees that worked on the radio frequencies. And that's why, like the Al Qaeda, so people don't understand about these Al Qaeda men in Iraq and Afghanistan, all these third world countries, man, they're good at one thing, and that's combat, right? And that's one thing they're fucking good at. And we would adapt, they would adapt. We would adapt to their new technologies, and they would adapt to ours. That's where the pressure plate IEDs came in, because we kept blocking the radio frequencies from the handhelds going off. Because they would hook a radio up or a cell phone, and they called a cell phone, and it would blow the bomb up, right? Well, they figured out that we found a way to block those signals, right? So what they did was they started laying wire down to where you drive across the road, it would connect and blow up, or the pressure plate, so they would adapt to us adapting to their, to their warfare.
Well, and I think what people don't understand, I think a lot of countries over there, especially in the Middle East, I know, especially China too, They start at a very young age to learn about firearms, how to fire, warfare, all that stuff. And they do it for a reason where, back here in the States in America, we have the luxury of schools. We have the luxury of being children. We have the luxury of growing up. And over there, that luxury is completely gone, because they don't know what's going to happen. You have all these countries that are constantly fighting each other for whatever. I mean, you have Iran fighting Syria, or, Iraq fighting Afghanistan, or Afghanistan fighting with, Saudi, whatever, Iraq fighting with Saudi, whatever it is. So these kids, I mean, at a young age, it's like they're thrust into being adults, like right away.
100%. Yeah. We had so many people. I mean, the biggest and that's what's crazy about these people is like, these people, they have no respect for life. Like they respect, we see a child die and it just kills us for life, ruins a person for life. Right. It's your child. I mean, it's just like an everyday thing for them. They would target their own schools, they're whoever they were against. Cause a lot of that was, the Shiites and the Sunnis battling, or the Kurds there, whoever it was. The Kurds were a real small minority there. But the Shiites and the Sunnis were always battling each other, right? The Ba'ath Party was always going to, when they were coming out of power, and it's like they would just be destroying each other's kids in school. We know how many times we went to schools to firefights would take days. They'd lure us to a school to have a firefight with us. You know what I mean? It's just be like these people. It's like people don't understand how lucky we are to grow up. And that's why I always tell people, all these people post online. It's like, man, I wish you would go visit a third world country and go do some service work there and see how much you'll respect life after all that, man, because, South Korea is a good example. South Korea is a beautiful country. It's amazing, but they always have that constant threat of the North, right? 38 parallel. Right. I was right up beside it. I was right up on it, a train by it all the time. And back in 2003, and, the thing about it is those kids in South Korea, they all have to do it. I think a year, 2 years, whatever it is, maybe 3, I'm not sure what it is, but they all have to do service. If you're a male, you have to go and do service. It's either they're all okay with the Republic of Korea Army, or a lot of them got to be in the Katusa Army, which is the Korean augmentation to the U.S. Army, where they were U.S. soldiers with us for a while, right? But they all had to serve, which I think is a great idea. It's just my opinion. I know that's a little too authoritarianism, but I just.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that, if we had that here, I think things would be a lot different.
Yeah.
Especially with, in certain demographics, I think it would be a lot different. I think people would grow up a lot faster.
Yeah.
Be more responsible. I know other countries. I know my wife, she's Greek. She's from Greece. And that's one thing that they have there, where they have to serve, I think it's like 2 or 3 years mandatory if you're a male. You got to go.
A lot of countries. More countries are that aren't, I believe. You know what I mean? It's like, because you never know when something happens and all like that. It teaches you a newfound respect and discipline for your country. And it's like this now I have, instead of being like all these, and that's the biggest thing I hate seeing these days. It's kind of tangent, but it's like the disrespect towards our soldiers. Like when I got back from Iraq, man, everybody I saw in the grocery store would be like, thank you for your service. I didn't like wearing my uniform out after work because, well, first of all, because you're not supposed to, but because I would always get attention that I didn't want. People would be paying for my gas, and it was like, and because everybody loved us because the war was going on. Right now, people, it's like the hate for the military is like I never thought I would see that after serving in the Army. I never thought I would see that in America, especially this. I'm 42, and I was, I got out when I was 26. I never thought 15 years later this would be the situation that I'd be witnessing.
Yeah, no, it sickens me because, knowing. Not being there, but talking with other, military has been a big thing in my family for, a lot of the family members. I tried to go after 9/11, but because of my past at that time, they're like, no, we can't take you.
Yeah, right.
That's, precisely why my brother, he joined right after 9/11 because he was, he was pissed. Let's just be honest. A lot of people that joined after 9/11 were pissed off at what happened and wanted to get that revenge. Or whatever it was that was going on. My brother, I'll be honest, he wanted revenge for what happened. And, I can't blame people for joining for that. Yeah. And I know the stories that he told me when he was there, because he was on the Humvee, he was a gunner on Humvee at one point. And his first time back after serving one tour over there, he was showing me pictures of Iraq. And he's like, yeah, and he was telling me the story how I was on the Humvee. And I guess you guys got some armor that you guys wear when you're on there. And I guess he was telling me he got pegged in the chest, pegged in the back because the 50 cal was out. And by the time he got the 50 cal back up and going, then we start going through the pictures. He's like, see this right over here? And he's pointing to this fucking just obscure thing that was there. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what the fuck is that? He's like, remember how I told you the story about I got hit in the chest and in the back with, from shots? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, this is his leg. That's his torso. That's his arm. And my first response to my brother was like, what the fuck did they do to you over there? Because that was, to me at the time, was just so fucking like, that's morbid.
Yeah.
You're showing me pictures of this. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
And, then he started to, but I think what people also don't understand with that, like my brother was so gung-ho. Like he went over there, did multiple tours.
Yeah.
And then he went to South Korea. He put himself in harm's way all the time, anytime he could. And for him, he told me stories in Afghanistan where they were given the order to stand down, even though they were being shot at. And the reason why they gave the order to stand down was because they were holding kids in front of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Shield.
And that's what I'm saying. The value for life that we hold is not what so many hold. And people see,
right.
We see children as a gift and, as a future, a lot of people see as a shield or whatever it is, and that's so important to, and all this stuff is stuff that, I bring into recovery today. Right. And it's like bringing all that stuff is a background that most people don't have, right. To be able to talk about, well, I went, and here's the thing is like, people think that like your brother that went through all that stuff is like, how do you adjust after that to life? Right. And the story is there's a lot of us that are just like me. They're sitting in prison for life right now. There's a lot of us that are just like me. They're one of those 22 a day veterans who commit suicide, and especially this time of year. And it's like, the battle doesn't change. Like I said, I've been out of Iraq for coming up on 20 years. And some nights it's like I'm still there, and that's in my dreams. And some days, and my nights, and I'm not gonna lie, my nights are so bad sometimes that I'm exhausted all day because of my nightmare. I'm exhausted because it's just taking the energy out of me. Because you've had nightmares, and I'm sure you and people that will hear this, nightmares that are so real you swear you're back there, and you wake up in a bad mood because of it, and you feel like you just, no matter how much sleep you get, you're fucking exhausted when you wake up.
Oh, exactly. You know what? Sleep is, for me, sleep is still, I think I average maybe, if I'm lucky, 4 or 5 hours a night.
Yeah.
Sleep, and that's something that people also don't understand. Like when you have PTSD and stuff, when you're reliving these things, you're sleeping very lightly. You're always sleeping basically like you sleep with one eye open. That's kind of what's going on. The slightest movement, the slightest sound, the slightest whatever, you're fucking awake. And I could just imagine for the military guys, like, ex-military like you, my brother and stuff like that. I know how it is for me, when I have those nightmares and not sleeping and all that stuff. But for you guys, I could just imagine, because I know like when fireworks would go off, that would trigger my brother.
Yeah.
Certain circumstances, large crowds, and it's completely 100% understandable, but a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, what? It's just fireworks. I've yelled at people when they were laying off fireworks. A buddy of mine has PTSD, and we were just sitting out front of my house, and the neighbor down the street was lighting off fireworks, and you can literally see the change in the demeanor. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, "You all right, brother?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll be all right." I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah." And then fucking goes off again. I'm like, sit in the garage, man. I'll be right back. I went down there. I'm like, "Hey, you need to stop lighting that shit off. I have somebody with PTSD, ex-military guy here. Knock the shit off. It's great you want to do all this shit, but it's fucking still daylight out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be fucking lighting this shit off right now."
Right.
But, it's, people don't really understand that. I think more awareness. And I think one thing that I hope with this episode and this show right now is for anybody that's listening, watching, they get more of an understanding about it, with the recovery that is needed. It's not 3 days of recovery and you're done. It's a lifetime.
Yeah.
You're walking this the rest of your life. It's when we say with PTSD, it's a daily battle. It's a daily fucking battle. You have your good days, you have your bad days. You can be having a good day, then all of a sudden, boom, at a drop of a dime, it turns to shit because something just triggered you, And I hope this really definitely brings more awareness to this. That's kind of what where I sit with that, and And that's why I like doing episodes like this, is because it brings that awareness to the things that people need to, learn about more.
Yeah. Yeah. And it raises the stigma. And that's the reason that I'm out there all the time. Cause like people hear felon or people hear combat veteran or people hear PTSD and they're just like, you know what I mean? A dude's less than or
Yeah.
a girl less than. It's like, no, they have. And once you get on the other side of that, you bring more to the table to offer because you can be like, not only have I recovered, but I have a story to tell for others that might need to hear that story. Right.
Exactly.
Or I listen to other stories when I go to recovery meetings, and I tell people all the time, I'm heavily involved in recovery because I can't afford to go back, right? I can't afford I'll lose everything I have, and in my spirituality, my what sanity I have today, the family, the job and all these things. Is like I work in recovery and I'm blessed to be able to show up every day to be able to try to help another addict out or try to help somebody struggle with mental health or alcohol or addiction, whatever it is you're struggling with, housing, homelessness, all that stuff comes hand in hand, right? And it's like people want to throw money at things and throw you don't it's money is needed. The programs are needed, but it's the time and the right resources in the right direction, right? Like the company that I work for, man, I mean, it's a nonprofit. We don't make a lot of money working there. You get into our job is because you want to help, and that's it. If
Right.
you don't want to help, then you find something else. You could definitely find something that pays better, right? Because you're not going to get rich doing it, but you're going to help more people at a job like ours and a company like ours than you and I've ever seen any other company help people. Like we get people. I work in a homeless shelter every week here, and I work in Kansas City, and I work in all over the different counties in our area. And it's like when I say we, the company, I don't do anything. I help connect people to resources so they can get housed and get into rehab. We put in people in the rehab multiple people every day to rehab, multiple people in the housing, Oxford housing, shelters. These people are getting a chance at life, and what they do with it after that is up to them, right? And that's the
Right.
thing about it. But we get them into recovery programs, we get them into the right resources, and I get to share what I'm sharing with you to my clients and be like, hey, you're struggling with homelessness, you're struggling with mental health, you're struggling with addiction, which is usually all three most of the time. A lot of times, I've been there. This is how I got out of it. Maybe you could take this route too, or a similar route. But people have to understand that your recovery in PTSD, mental health, whatever it is your recovery it is from, it has to be your own recovery, right? It can't be mine. Like you can't just
Right.
I'm going to copy what Jess does. It's like, here's some ideas, but you have to walk your own walk. And here, the thing about it is you got to put in the work and it's not just about attending recovery meetings. It's not just about going to rehab. It's about making sure that if you need to go to see a mental health provider, you're getting a mental health assessment done,
Mhm.
getting on the meds that you need to be on that are helping you out, right?
Right.
You need to, in working with those meds, you have to be doing active, recovery. You have to be working a program. You have to make sure that you're balancing your work to your leisure and having a job. That's the biggest thing is so many people don't want to work. And not only does work pay money, but work is to keep you giving you that purpose, right? What am I getting up for every day besides my family? What am I getting up for my community? But I need to go somewhere where I feel empowered and where I feel like I'm doing something for the betterment, right? And
Wow.
that's what I always advocate for work, man.
Well, sir, I must say, man, I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you what you're continuing to do to help others. And, you know, we need more people like you. We
Man,
definitely do.
thank you
We
so
need
much.
more people like you. And, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. I want to have you back on the show again. And I'm sure you're going to I would like to get you on a regular fixture on the show so we can get your message out there to more and more people. I have listeners all over the United States, all over the world that listen to the podcast. So hopefully this episode will resonate with somebody that is struggling right now and reaches out to somebody that, somebody like yourself that can help, because that's what we need. We need to stop the stigma of, addiction and, focus on recovery and helping people to get through these things.
Absolutely.
We need to do that. So with that being said, why don't you let everybody know again where they can find you and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, the easiest place to find me is on Instagram or TikTok at recon, 2 recovery. It's same handle on both of them. And then if you find me there, you'll find me on Facebook. There should be links there for everything. But yeah, you guys can DM me if you're struggling, if you're going through something. I'll spend the time to talk to you. I may not get back to you within the hour, but I will get back to you as soon as I can.
Awesome. And don't forget, folks, you can find me over there on Instagram and on Facebook, where I'm heavily active at The Hammer Drops. Don't forget to like, follow, and share not only my content, but also Jess's content over here as well, because what it does, it helps break those algorithms and allows these things to get out to more and more people that need to hear it, that may need the help, that they just don't know what route to go down. And this is going to actually help them out. If you want to get in touch with me, feel free to email me at david@thehammerdrops.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. And I'll be able to respond to you a lot quicker that way than through DMs. DMs seem to get filled up pretty quickly, and I try to get through them as fast as I can. But unfortunately, email is probably the best way to do it. You're going to be able to see this, obviously, there, YouTube and all your favorite podcast platforms as well. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating, because, again, that helps with those algorithms. And before we end the show, I have to say, wouldn't it be great if we as a country, if we were, a 9/12, if we can get back to that as a country, where we were united all as one, I think we'd be in a much better place. Yeah. So until the next time, folks, you guys be good to one another.